Screenwriting Class, Session 8, Genres and Their Rules. Welcome to StoryForge Academy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to have you back in class. Today's lesson is one of the pillars of cinematic storytelling. Genres and their conventions. By the end of this session, you'll understand how genre shapes emotion, why each genre has its own dramatic grammar, and how to bend or blend these rules to create something truly original. You'll also learn to identify the key conventions of horror: comedy, romance, and action. And you'll see how a single scene, like the Turkish Adventure, Shadows and Castle Whispers, can shift tone completely depending on genre. But before we dive in, a quick reminder. If you're learning something valuable from these sessions, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a class. Your engagement keeps these lessons alive and allows StoryForge Academy to grow and reach more aspiring writers like you. Now, let's begin. Today's focus. We're going to explore how genre defines not just what happens in your story, but how it feels. Genre is emotional architecture. It's the reason the same plot, a group enters an abandoned castle at night, can be terrifying, hilarious, romantic, or explosive, depending on tone, pacing, and visual language. In the first part of the class, you'll learn the essential rules and emotional goals behind the 4 major genres. Then, through our case study of the Turkish Adventure, we'll analyze how to fuse genres skillfully, combining the suspense of action thriller with the dread of supernatural horror. Finally, you'll complete a short genre-switching exercise, rewriting a single scene in 2 completely different emotional keys. So grab your notebook, settle in, and get ready to see how genre turns words on a page into a living, breathing cinematic experience. Let's begin our journey into the strange and wonderful language of genre. The start of the Turkish Adventure. Shadows and Castle Whispers. The appointed night arrived. Reuben and Maria left the old man's house precisely at midnight. They passed through the narrow, dark alleyways, where the scent of damp earth and wild herbs filled the air, until they reached the edge of the village. A side road leading to the village ran alongside its old semi-abandoned section. Reuben felt a strange, unsettling sensation in that place. It was as if his entire being was preparing for a confrontation with A.L., the demonic woman, the supernatural entity, rumored to inhabit the desolate castle and guard its treasure. They had reached the location and were now waiting for Roland's group. A few minutes later, Maria whispered softly to Reuben, "They're here." Reuben looked down the road that, in the night's darkness, seemed to lead straight to hell. A van, its lights off, was approaching slowly and silently. Moments later, the van stopped and the group disembarked. Roland, with his tall stature, stepped out first, followed by the rest of the team in sequence. But the last person to emerge seemed to breathe new life into Reuben, the one he hadn't expected. Victor was there. Victor's presence was an immense source of strength for Reuben, a balm for his unseen emotional wounds. They embraced each other without hesitation. Reuben whispered in Victor's ear, "Shouldn't you be in Iran right now?" Victor replied with a tired smile, "I was, but the plan didn't go as smoothly as expected, and I had to wait a week for the antiquities to reach Tehran from the city where they were discovered. Salvador wanted me to join you instead of waiting, saying if Reuben wished we could both go to Iran together." The entire group picked up their backpacks and necessary tools. Now, they had to venture into the serene plain beneath the full moon. Roland sternly emphasized that, until their return, no one was allowed to smoke or use anything that emitted light. Roland stated, "Any light from our side means our plan and our map are compromised." This location, due to its ancient history and constant excavations, is extremely sensitive. The slightest light, even something as insignificant as a cigarette, can be seen from several kilometers away, and anyone who spots it will immediately call the Turkish police and report it. They parked the van nearby, next to a deserted house on the edge of the old road, and began their trek. They had to walk for an hour to reach the ancient thousands-year-old castle. The castle where rumors claimed A.L., the Jinn guardian of the treasure, resided. Reuben's leg, after a year of complete recovery, no longer bothered him, and he moved like a professional athlete, keeping pace with the rest of the group. Along the way, the glowing eyes of animals, especially foxes, made them uneasy. The further they advanced, becoming lost in the vast plain, the more fear enveloped them. Suddenly the howling of wolves reached their ears. It was as if these wolves were aware of intruders entering their territory and were issuing a warning. The silence of the plain felt heavier than ever. Slowly, the desolate ancient castle appeared before their eyes. The very place where the legendary treasure was supposed to be unearthed. A treasure that they said A.L. guarded. The dig begins, howls and the first taste of danger. Gradually, a palpable excitement surged among the treasure-hunting specialists. The modern devices in their hands began blaring with continuous sharp alarms. A sustained, piercing sound that indicated something was buried beneath the earth. A wave of thrill swept through the group. The specialists confirmed the presence of several ancient tombs, which delighted Roland and brought a smile to his face. But it cast a deep anxiety over the others, especially Reuben. He knew this was just the beginning, and they'd have to be involved in this ordeal until morning, deep within an ancient castle where rumors of A.L., the demonic entity, made the air feel heavier with each passing moment. Reuben, under intense psychological pressure and unwilling to remain idle for a second, told Roland, "I'll take part in the digging. I don't have the patience for guard duty." Roland nodded. The target spot was marked, and Reuben and Victor grabbed their shovels and pickaxes, beginning to dig into the hard, dry ground. Other than the monotonous chirping of crickets and the rhythmic, continuous thud of shovels and pickaxes against dirt and rock, no other sound broke the night's silence. Sweat streamed down Reuben's and Victor's foreheads, their hands aching from the strenuous work, and their pounding breaths were clearly audible in the still night. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by terrifying successive roars. Several enormous wolves burst from the darkness, attacking one of the men on guard duty. The man's heartbreaking scream echoed through the air. The wolves knocked him to the ground, tearing at him with their savage teeth. The group was plunged into shock and terror, unsure what to do in such a situation. They seemed utterly defenseless against the wolves' unrestrained fury. Reuben, amidst the horror, caught glimpses of dark, fleeting shadows out of the corner of his eye, like specters silently watching from the darkness, a sensation that reminded him of A.L.'s ominous presence. Right at the peak of the chaos, the wolves suddenly released the man with faint, strange whimpering. Sounds more like whimpers than howls, and swiftly vanished into the night. Everyone looked around in confusion and bewilderment, searching for the source of this unexpected turn of events. Eyes turned to Roland, who held something in his hand, a frequency device designed to ward off dogs and wild animals. Roland, still panting, said, "I hoped this device would work on wolves too." Maria immediately rushed to the injured man. He writhed on the ground, blood pouring from the deep wounds, the marks of the wild wolf's teeth visible on his arm and leg. Maria quickly pulled bandages and antiseptic from her bag and began treating him. Despite the horrifying incident, Reuben and Victor continued digging with complete focus, as if nothing could deter them from their goal. The specialists, along with their devices, continuously examined the excavation site, searching through the excavated soil for any signs that would confirm the digging spot. Reuben was digging, but his attention was still on his surroundings, especially the group. He noticed some individuals were terrified. They seemed to have seen shadows that, to Reuben, looked more supernatural and invisible than mere wolves. Victor, whose attention was mostly on the specialists, increased his digging speed with each passing moment. He too seemed to smell the treasure. Roland approached the diggers and asked the specialists for their opinion. One of the specialists took a handful of soil, showed its specific texture to Roland, and said, "This is dead soil." Roland asked in surprise, "What does that mean?" The specialist explained, "It means grave soil." And then the specialist pointed to the excavation area and explained that the exact spot detected by the device and the shape of that area confirmed it was a grave. "Everything will be clear within half a meter." Again, a palpable tension settled over the group. Some of those who had seen the shadows looked around nervously. Gradually, the hardness of the soil turned to the firmness of concrete. Reuben and Victor were sweating profusely and panting from sheer exhaustion, their rapid, pounding heartbeats palpable in their throats. The experts said this was the final stage of the work, and after this, the royal tomb would open. Roland asked for the reason behind the soil's hardness. The experts explained, "It's due to the use of lime." In ancient times, lime served as the construction material of the present era, used for strength and protection. Suddenly, Reuben's pickaxe seemed to pierce a ceiling, falling into an empty space below. Reuben quickly exclaimed, "We've reached the tomb! Below is an empty chamber, and whatever is here is beneath this." The smell of ancient earth, dampness, and something unknown emanated upwards from the opening. The presence of the wolves was still felt, and they were even occasionally seen circling the group, with Roland pushing them back each time using the frequency device. Cautiously, Reuben continued digging, and slowly the ceiling of that thousands-year-old imperial tomb, with its layers of lime and soil, was fully opened. Disappointment in the empty tomb, a worthless discovery. An indescribable excitement surged through the group. Everyone was waiting for the tomb to be fully opened, harboring grandiose mental images of hidden treasures. Victor got to work, and with incredible speed, he opened the tomb's ceiling just enough for them to peer inside. The tomb was about a meter high. On its floor, traces of a skeleton were visible, but most of it was covered in dirt and dust. Beside the skeleton, a few simple, broken clay pots were also seen, showing signs of damage. This was not what they had expected. It was as if this grave, presumed to belong to a 3,000-year-old emperor, had turned out to be the burial place of a pauper. Victor began exploring inside the grave. He slowly removed the skeleton, first the skull, then the rest of the bones, and finally those simple broken clay pots. Despair and disappointment consumed everyone, especially Roland, who looked as if his entire world had collapsed. This was not what he had come for, after all that effort and risk. A few worthless bronze beads were also found inside one of the clay pots. It seemed these were the most valuable, possessions of the poor man, whose grave had now been opened. The experts were flustered and confused, unsure what to say. They looked at their devices, whose lights still flickered mysteriously in the silent night. Roland said with a voice full of despair, "So the treasure-hunting devices found these worthless beads and gave an alarm for them?" Doubt and anger surged in his gaze. Maria, oblivious to the prevailing atmosphere of despair, held the skull in her hand and examined it with peculiar precision. Victor, still inside the tomb, looked up at her from below, astonished at how a woman could hold a 3,000-year-old skull like that. Staring at it, he asked, "Do you know him?" Maria was about to retort sharply when Reuben cut her off, saying in a weary but firm tone, "There's enough tension in this hell already." Then, with a more familiar tone, he told Victor, "You're crazy." Victor emerged from the grave. Everyone was waiting for the operation to end. In that heavy silence, everyone expected Roland to call for their return, from despair to discovery and dread, the pulsing heart of the treasure. Roland genuinely refused to believe that all this effort, high risk and heavy cost, would lead to such a worthless outcome. He still stared at the treasureless tomb. The experts emerged from their initial shock, and with Victor out of the grave, they began re-examining the site. They activated their devices, and this time, the alarms blared with unprecedented intensity. Dissect, the start of the Turkish Adventure, Shadows and Castle Whispers, and the subsequent chapters. This is a rich, evocative piece of prose that, while not a screenplay itself, offers crucial lessons in pacing, atmosphere, characterization, and building suspense. We will treat it as detailed scene work and an outline for a thrilling narrative. Advanced Screenwriting Analysis, Shadows and Castle Whispers. Tara, the start of the Turkish Adventure, Shadows and Castle Whispers. Establishing the inciting incident and stakes, the weight, time and place. Precisely at midnight, narrow, dark alleyways, edge of the village. The setting immediately establishes a clandestine, high-stakes operation. Midnight is a classic trope for illicit activity, maximizing suspense. Atmosphere and foreshadowing. The scent of damp earth and wild herbs creates sensory detail. More importantly, Rubens' strange, unsettling sensation, and the mention of A.L., the demonic woman, the supernatural entity, immediately inject the core conflict, man versus supernatural, and elevate the stakes beyond just finding treasure. This is not a simple heist. It's a confrontation. Screenwriting note. This is where we establish the genre blend, action-adventure meets horror, supernatural thriller. B. Introduction of the team, the arrival. Pacing, the whispering, they're here, and the slow, silent approach of the van, its lights off, builds momentary focused tension. Character revelation, emotional core. The introduction of Victor is a masterstroke of character development. His presence is described as an immense source of strength and a balm for his unseen emotional wounds for Ruben. Lesson. This emotional connection grounds the high-octane plot. It gives the audience a relationship to invest in immediately. The surprise and subsequent embrace is a powerful, nonverbal expression of their bond. A classic show, don't tell moment. Exposition, natural dialogue. Victor's explanation about Iran and Salvador's decision to redirect him is exposition delivered seamlessly through personal dialogue. It clarifies Victor's presence and hints at a larger, pre-existing criminal network, Salvador. C. Setting the rules, the trek. The constraint ticking clock. Roland's stern rule against any light, especially smoking, and the reason can be seen from several kilometers away. Turkish police serves as a critical narrative constraint. Constraints enhance tension. Lesson. In screenwriting, limitations force creative solutions and increase risk. Every scene after this carries the weight of potential discovery. Physical journey as tension builder. The 1-hour walk is not just travel time. It's a progression into hostile territory. Sensory detail, glowing eyes of animals, especially foxes, and the howling of wolves, a classic primal fear, externalize the internal fear of the characters. Atmosphere. The silence of the plane felt heavier than ever, is a superb line indicating the subjective experience of the characters, not just objective reality. 2. The dig begins. Howls and the first taste of danger. A. The confirmation and character action. The hook. The devices, blaring with continuous, sharp alarms, is the immediate reward and justification for the risk. It shifts the energy from nervous waiting to action. Ruben's motivation. Ruben's desire to participate in the digging, because he doesn't have the patience for guard duty, is a character. Choice driven by his intense psychological pressure. Lesson. Give your main characters a strong, active internal motivation, even when faced with external threat. He's trying to outrun his fear of AL through action. B. The first major conflict, the wolves. Rhythm and contrast. The monotonous chirping of crickets and the rhythmic, continuous thud of digging establish a steady, almost meditative rhythm. This is crucial for the inevitable shattering event, the jump scare action beat. The terrifying, successive roars, and the wolf attack is the first major violent event. The victim's heartbreaking scream acts as the sound cue. Supernatural tease. Reuben's glimpse of dark, fleeting shadows, like specters silently watching, reinforces the supernatural threat, AL, right in the middle of a very real, primal threat, the wolves. Lesson: the best thrillers layer their threats. The audience is distracted by the physical danger, while the main metaphysical danger lurks in the background. C. The turnaround and escalation. The Deus Ex Machina, justified. Roland's frequency device is a prepared solution, preventing a total massacre. It's effective because it was foreshadowed by his earlier sternness. Focus and resolve. Maria treats the injured, but Reuben and Victor continue, digging with complete focus. This highlights their single-minded resolve, a trait often seen in anti-heroes, or characters with a deep-seated goal. Expert confirmation. The specialist's analysis of the dead, soil, grave soil, and the final prediction, everything, will be clear within half a meter, is a structural technique to rebuild immediate anticipation after the action beat. 3. Disappointment in the empty tomb. A worthless discovery. A. The false climax, the grave opens, anticipation versus reality. The narrative meticulously builds, indescribable excitement leading to the opening. The physical description of the tomb, a meter high, layers of lime and soil, gives a sense of hard-won achievement. The letdown, the twist. The revelation, a pauper's burial, a skeleton simple, broken clay pots, and worthless bronze beads, is a huge narrative deflation. Lesson: this is a powerful use of anticipatory failure. It subverts the audience's expectation, mirroring Roland's entire world had collapsed. This kind of disappointment makes the eventual true discovery more impactful. B. Character under pressure. Roland's reaction, his voice full of despair, and the doubt-anger in his gaze are a great character moment. The leader is visibly cracking. Maria's defiance of atmosphere, her clinical examination of the 3,000-year-old skull is a wonderful piece of character quirkiness. It shows she is detached from the emotional drama and focused on the scientific, archaeological reality. Reuben's peacemaking, his firm intervention, there's enough tension in this hell already, reestablishes him as the emotional center of the group, someone who understands the psychological toll of the situation. If from despair to discovery and dread, the pulsing heart of the treasure. A. The refusal to quit, Roland's stance. Internal conflict. Roland genuinely refused to believe the outcome. This stubbornness is a defining characteristic of a driven leader in a thriller. He cannot accept defeat. This keeps the scene from ending. B. The true revelation, the drumbeat. The specialist's redemption. They re-examine the site, and the alarms blare with unprecedented intensity. Contrast with the previous disappointment is the key to the final build-up. The crucial action. The specialist stomped on the floor of that empty grave, which produces the deep, resonant sound, as if a drum was beating from within the earth. Lesson: this is a perfect climactic beat. The sound is visceral, mysterious, and immediately tells the audience and the characters that the actual treasure chamber is beneath the decoy grave. The sound of the drum evokes a primal, beating heart, the very pulse of the treasure they seek. Summary for students. This narrative progression shows us how to structure a high-stakes scene. Establish the threat stakes, AL, police. Introduce an emotional anchor, Victor. Set a constraint, no light. Action rises, the dig. Subvert expectation with a real threat, the wolves. Deliver a major narrative punch. Anticipatory failure, the empty tomb. Re-establish the goal with a visceral discovery, the drumbeat. Your next assignment is to take the final section from despair to discovery, and dread, and write it as a 2-page screenplay scene, focusing only on the action, dialogue, and the sound design of the drum beat. Advanced Screenwriting, Session 8, Genres and Their Conventions. Welcome back to Advanced Screenwriting. Today we undertake a critical analysis of genre and the fundamental narrative conventions that define it. For professional screenwriters, understanding genre is not about limitation, but about mastering the established communication contract with your audience. Every script you write promises a specific emotional experience, and genre provides the blueprint for delivering on that promise. We will explore 4 core genres and then use our case study, The Turkish Adventure, to see how successful genre blending operates. The foundational role of genre in screenwriting. A genre acts as a contract between the screenwriter and the viewer. When an audience selects a film, they have inherent expectations about the pace, the character types, the kind of conflict, and the emotional resolution. Violating these core expectations carelessly can confuse or alienate the audience, while mastering them allows you to be innovative and surprising within a recognizable framework. Knowing the rules, conventions. Conventions are the recurring elements that define a genre. For example, in a slasher film, the convention is often that the promiscuous characters die first. In a romantic comedy, the convention is the meet cute, the barrier, and the grand gesture of reconciliation. Recognizing these tropes is the first step toward effective writing. Subverting the rules. True originality often comes not from inventing entirely new rules, but from cleverly subverting established ones. By grounding the audience in a familiar genre, e.g., an action film, you can suddenly inject an element from a different genre, e.g., horror, to create sustained tension and surprise. Our case study is a perfect example of this genre blending, as deconstructing 4 core genres. Fleeting action, the challenge of the impossible. Core emotional goal, to evoke excitement, adrenaline, and visceral engagement. The audience must feel the thrill of survival and competence under pressure. Key conventions. Protagonist. The hero must be highly competent, resourceful, and typically possesses a specialized skill set, e.g., espionage, military, tactical theft. Pacing and structure. The narrative is built around a series of escalating set pieces, chases, fights, stunts, that serve as physical obstacles. The pace is generally quick and relentless. Antagonist. A formidable human opponent, a rival organization, a supervillain, or a systemic threat, a corrupt government, that must be physically overcome. Gear and tactics. Emphasis on specialized equipment, gadgets, weapons, vehicles, and detailed tactical planning. Action application in the text. Roland's strict no light rule and the use of the frequency device to repel the wolves are perfect. Examples of action thriller conventions. The rule creates a tactical constraint, and the device is the gear that provides a practical, if slightly strained, solution to a physical threat. The rapid, professional digging by Ruben and Victor also falls into this professional, competent action framework. 2. Supernatural horror, the fear of the unknown. Core emotional goal, to evoke dread, existential fear, and anxiety. The audience must confront a threat that defies logic and often relates to deep, primal fears. Key conventions. Setting. Remote, isolated locations, like the desolate, ancient castle, that deny the characters easy escape or access to help. Isolation is key to building dread. The threat. Often an unseen, non-human, malevolent entity that operates beyond the rules of physics. The entity's presence is often signaled through strange sensory details or psychological effects. Pacing, slow, creeping suspense and atmosphere building, punctuated by sudden, terrifying shocks. Atmosphere. heavy emphasis on darkness, silence, and the character's subjective psychological breakdown. Horror application in the text. The persistent rumors of Al, the demonic woman, Jinn Guardian, are the central horror element. Reuben's unsettling sensation and the glimpse of dark, fleeting shadows are classic horror techniques, teasing the monster without fully showing it, thereby maximizing the dread of the unknown. The silence of the plane, feeling heavier than ever, is a descriptive way to convey atmospheric, psychological pressure. 3. Comedy, the subversion of logic. Core emotional goal, to evoke laughter through incongruity, surprise, and the cathartic release of tension. Key conventions. The character flaw. Protagonists are often defined by a core flaw: arrogance, naivety, poor social skills, that constantly puts them in ridiculous conflict with the world. Pacing relies heavily on timing, either quick setup, punchline delivery, or the slow, committed execution of an absurd idea. Dialogue, witty banter, hyperbole, and dialogue that is often disconnected from the reality of the situation. Plot usually involves a mundane or trivial goal that becomes impossibly complicated due to the character's flaws or external absurdity. Example: a crime caper where the protagonists are entirely incompetent, turning the high-stakes action into farce. 4. Romance, the pursuit of connection. Core emotional goal, to evoke hope, warmth, and emotional fulfillment centered on two individuals achieving genuine connection. Key conventions. Protagonists, two distinct individuals who are initially mismatched, incompatible, or separated by a fundamental barrier, e.g., social class, personality differences, prior relationships. Structure follows a clear progression: the meet cute, the development of the relationship, the conflict separation, the all is lost moment for the relationship, and the grand gesture leading to final reconciliation. Dialogue focused on vulnerability, emotional honesty, and revealing genuine character depths. Ending. The resolution is almost always optimistic, culminating in a clear statement of commitment or love. Example: two characters who are constantly at odds until a moment of shared vulnerability reveals their true connection. IV case study analysis, the power of genre blending. The Turkish Adventure is structurally fascinating because it uses the real, immediate dangers of the action thriller genre to make the subtle, pervasive horror element more effective. A. Layering threats. The narrative gives the characters and the audience 3 distinct threats: the human threat, thriller; the Turkish police, and the risk of exposure and capture. This is the external logistical threat. The primal threat, action adventure, the wolves. This is a sudden, physical, and solvable problem via Roland's device. The supernatural threat, horror, AL, and the shadows. This is the internal, psychological threat that cannot be solved with a shovel or a gadget. The simultaneous presence of these threats elevates the stakes far beyond a simple treasure hunt, keeping the audience destabilized and unsure of where the next danger will emerge. B. The emotional shock of disappointment. The scene disappointment in the empty tomb is a masterful genre subversion. In an action film, finding the tomb should lead to immediate success and a new set of problems, getting the gold out. Here, the discovery of the pauper's grave creates anticipatory failure, a moment of utter professional despair for Roland. This intentional deflation of the action, plot's tension makes the actual discovery, the drum beat, an exponentially more exciting and terrifying payoff. See the horror climax. The final shift in the narrative is pure horror genius. The experts re-examine the site, and the alarms blare with unprecedented intensity. This uses the action thriller device as a tool of the horror genre. The specialist stomps on the floor of the empty grave, and the deep, resonant sound, as if a drum was beating from within the earth, reaches their ears. This sound is the ultimate genre pivot. It immediately signals that the treasure is not just valuable. It is guarded, alive, and ominous. The sound is primal and terrifying, confirming that their initial disappointment was merely a clever decoy, and their true, supernatural confrontation is about to begin. The rhythmic drumming externalizes the dread and signifies that they have not found a vault of gold, but rather the beating heart of the entity, AL herself. Conclusion and assignment. Mastery of genre is the screenwriter's ultimate tool for emotional manipulation, in the best sense of the word. It allows you to create predictable comfort while simultaneously delivering unpredictable surprise. Screenwriting class, Session 8, Genres and Their Rules. Welcome to StoryForge Academy. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, we step into one of the most fascinating and essential dimensions of screenwriting, the world of genres. Genre is not a box that limits creativity, it's a language. Each genre comes with its own grammar, rhythm, and emotional logic. The more fluently you speak this language, the more powerfully you can connect with your audience. Part 1. What is genre and why it matters? Genre tells the audience what kind of emotional experience they're about to have. It sets expectations before a single line of dialogue appears. When someone sits down to watch a horror film, they're not seeking happiness. They're seeking fear. When they choose a romantic comedy, they want charm, not chills. But here's the paradox. While audiences crave familiarity, they also crave surprise. That's your challenge as a screenwriter, to respect the rules of a genre while breaking them in clever, satisfying ways. Think of genre as a contract between you and your audience. You promise certain emotions and tones. They agree to suspend disbelief in exchange for that experience. Part 2. The 4 core genres of today's lesson. Let's explore how story mechanics change when you shift between genres. 1. Horror, the art of fear. The purpose of horror is to evoke visceral emotion. It's not just about monsters or ghosts. It's about confronting the audience's deepest anxieties. Every horror story is about the loss of control over your body, your mind, your safety, or your sanity. Techniques. Build tension through pacing, silence, and subtext. Focus on what's unseen rather than what's shown. Use isolation and helplessness as narrative weapons. Famous examples: The Shining, Get Out, Hereditary. Notice how each uses setting: a hotel, a suburban home, a family house, to mirror the character's psychological collapse. 2. Comedy, the precision of chaos. Comedy is mathematics wrapped in emotion. Timing, rhythm, and contrast are everything. While horror makes us scream, comedy makes us recognize ourselves and laugh at the absurdity. Techniques. Exaggeration and reversal, the expected outcome flips. Honest emotions in ridiculous situations. Fast pacing, crisp dialogue, visual irony. Famous examples: The Grand Budapest Hotel, Superbad, The Office. Comedy lives in conflict, when desire meets obstacle in the most absurd way possible. 3. Romance, the architecture of desire. Romance is not about two people falling in love, it's about what prevents them from falling in love. Conflict, longing, and vulnerability drive the genre. Techniques. Emotional rhythm, attraction, tension, separation, reconciliation. Symbolism. Gestures, music, or recurring objects that embody love. Subtext. Unspoken desire carries more power than direct confession. Famous examples: Pride and Prejudice, Before Sunrise, La La Land. Every romance is ultimately a mirror held up to human hope, the dream that connection can redeem us. That action, the symphony of momentum. Action is not mindless. It's movement with purpose. Behind every chase, explosion, or battle lies a simple truth. Motion reveals character. Techniques. Keep stakes high and goals clear. Alternate between tension and release. fast versus slow beats. Every set piece must reveal personality or moral conflict. Famous examples: Mad Max, Fury Road, Die Hard, John Wick. The best action scenes are mini-dramas, physical conversations about courage, morality, and survival. Part 3. Cross-genre and hybrid writing. Modern cinema thrives on genre fusion. Horror comedy, Get Out. Romantic action, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Or sci-fi drama, Interstellar, prove that audiences crave emotional variety. The key is anchoring your story's emotional core. Ask yourself, what emotion do I want my audience to feel above all else? That's your dominant genre. Everything else must orbit around it. Part White, class exercise. Now, let's put this into practice. Exercise. Write one short scene, just one page between two characters. Then rewrite the same scene in two different genres. For example, a man and a woman waiting for a bus. In horror, the bus is late because the town has vanished. In romance, one is leaving forever. The other just arrived. In comedy, they're arguing over whose bus card is fake. In action, the bus explodes and the chase begins. You'll quickly discover how tone, pacing, and word choice reshape everything, even though the situation remains constant. Part V. Closing thoughts. Genre mastery is not about formula, it's about emotional architecture. Once you know the grammar, you can write freely. The audience doesn't want to see a horror movie or a love story. They want to feel something unforgettable. So your job as a screenwriter is to learn the rules so you can break them beautifully. Next session, we'll explore visual storytelling and symbolism. How to communicate entire philosophies through imagery rather than dialogue. Until then, keep writing, experimenting, and watching films with a new eye for how genre shapes emotion.